Hello, I'm Nathan Gargis, and today I'll be working on a 2006 NC Miata Grand Touring, replacing the valve cover, which unfortunately I had replaced a couple of months ago and had actually thought about making this video then, and actually forgot to make it at the beginning of this case just because I was waiting on the valve cover for 3 weeks to come, thanks to, I guess, COVID life. But I'm halfway through the job, so I'll start showing you the video from the valve cover completely off and rework things from the middle of the job to the end, so you can actually see where all the bolts are and the basics of how to do the job, and certainly the difficult things about the job, which is, of course, getting the bolts on the back of the valve cover off. I'll say it again in the middle of the video, but you need an 8, 10, and 12 millimeter wrenches to do this job. And all the bolts in here are 8, 10, and 12. Most of them are 8 millimeter. The 12s are more to take off the crossbar, so you can get back to the back of the engine. As you can see, here's the new valve cover. The old one, unfortunately, oil dipstick got kind of, it melted in, and I could not get it out. I cracked the valve cover trying to pull out the oil dipstick. Here's the new one. The most important things to recognize about the valve cover and trying to get this thing out is there are multiple screws that need to be loosened in order to get this off. There's one here, another one here, and then those are the two on the inside. The other ones that need to come off are the hardest ones, are these two, because they actually go underneath this piece here, and you've got to get all the way back there. In order to do that, you have to take off the crossbar that goes across here. That's the only way to be able to get back there. The other ones are fairly easy to get off. All these ones in the front. This one is important to realize it has a clasp on it, which is actually this piece. So it's hidden. So this piece actually sits on top of it, and that holds the hose that runs over top of the valve cover. So you got to make sure that you don't miss this one when you're trying to take it off. Of course, the first thing you have to do is take off all the caps for the spark plugs. Each one of those runs here, and each one is held in place by a screw that goes into each of these 4 holes. When you pop those off, which right here you have those pieces for the ignition. And here you can see inside spark plugs. This new valve cover actually has a new valve cover gasket. So you can see here's the gasket, and it actually has 4 pieces. You have the main gasket that runs all the way around, and then you have some other gaskets which go around where the spark plugs sit. You have this one, you have one that runs around 2 of the spark plugs, and another one back here. So I'll put some, I use some gasket sealant actually on a few of the places. You can see where I had put it before, there's a little bit of some left here in these corners. I had some here in this corner as well, just to make sure that those corners are well sealed. Otherwise, I really didn't use much in the way of sealant on this valve cover. All in all, it's not a hard job to take off. The worst part is just trying to get these screws that are way here in the back, which correspond to these 2 screws. Very difficult to get off. And in order to get this off, you actually have to take this big bolt here out. And that bolt sits actually over here. Hard to see actually. And I will show you again when I do it, but it actually sits way back down here and screws into the side of the engine block. And it is very painful to get this piece here off. Basically, it's 3 screws to get off. The worst one's probably the one on the side. The other thing you also have to take off is this piece here. I left the bolt on, but you need to disconnect that piece of the air conditioning hose in order to get at the piece. And I'll show you the process later. So when you put the valve cover back on, you gotta carefully slide it in, making sure that you keep this metal bracket out of the way. So that metal bracket's going to slide with these 2 holes, one on top of here and one on top of here, and then that other bolt is going to go over through this side of the bracket. Hard to see, but so I've already tightened up all these bolts here that go in. I still have to tighten up this one that's back here, and then after I get that tightened, I will take this off and put this back together. Things that have to be done here: reconnect this to this, make sure you put the oil cover back on, oil dipstick back into here. This piece with its bolt goes into here after you get this bracket back on. Once I'm done with that, I will get the crossbar support put back on as well. So, and then of course the very last 2 pieces is putting your spark plug caps back on. Each one of those needs to be hooked back up, and actually I had disconnected the electronics for it as well so that I could move them well out of the way to get the valve cover back on. So everything is looking pretty good now. The hardest thing is going to be, of course, getting that bracket put back on. A bit of a pain, especially trying to get that bolt put in through that side hole. And that will be it. Alright, so I got that bracket piece back on. It fits over top of those 2 bolts that screw the valve cover into the back. Here's the one bolt on top, and this is the other bolt that we're going to tighten down. After we get those tight, we are going to fit this piece back on, and it has its own bolt as well. There's a couple bolts that I have here. We have this bolt that fits into here. It goes into this hole, and then this bolt goes in through this hole and into here, and that will hold that piece on. So again, there is the bracket here. Looking at it from the opposite side, there is the hole down here, which takes this big bolt. So the last 2 pieces you need, there's actually 4 screw bolts that hold on this back bracket here. There's one over here, this one, or the 2 that hold the valve cover on, and then there's that one down there. The biggest pain is to get those 4 bolts put on. So last couple pieces here, screwed on this bolt here, 8mm. This is a 10mm bolt. Again, you need 8, 10, 12mm wrenches to do this job. So here I have 10mm wrench. Get this piece here. Make sure that you screw on this ground here. So get this piece here. Make sure that's secured. So I actually got that back bolt here secured with a 10mm wrench, very short wrench, in order to fit back there. Last piece to get is this back valve cover bolt, and then re-secure this AC hose, and then secure this, and then we'll put on the clasp for this hose, and then replace the valve cover. After we put in the spark plug covers and reattach them to their electric components, which I'll show once I get done here. Alright, so got that piece hooked back on. So next up is to start replacing these. I'll start getting them back in and rehooking the plugs here. Making sure they're in the right sequence, which is not too hard to do because they're lined up. So, make sure this goes back in here and then nice and tightly on. Hooking up this piece, and the last one, then back in. Get this electric component popped back up and back in. Now, grab more bolts here. Get those put back in. And voila. So that and reconnecting this hose is it. So that will be it. Just screwing those pieces on, and then getting this piece goes back on here and holds this. So that just goes like that. And then I'll show you hooking the cover back on, which is a little bit of a pain to get off more than put back on, because these two holes here and then this clasp correlate to hooking onto these two plastic pins, and then it hooks onto here. So basically it's much easier to put back on. You just press it down and that's it. Hope this video has come in helpful. I could not find any other NC Miata valve cover videos, so hopefully this one will help people, albeit it is not the most well composed video.